And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning with Miss Nancy. And as you know, on Tuesdays, I go live, and I always have a special guest to join me because my goal is to feature all of the men that I know who are making a positive impact on early learners because our brothers get a bad break. Many people don't think that they're doing positive things, but we are changing that narrative one interview at a time. And today we have a special guest all the way from, I'm going to say Washington, or do I say Maryland? Rick Seabron, and he's our guest today, and I'm so happy to have you, Rick. Thank you for taking from your busy schedule to join Learning with Miss Nancy.
Thanks for having me.
So, folks, I don't know if you see the resemblance, but he's my first cousin, and his mother and my mother are friends. And so today's topic is the wordsmith and the early learner. But before we get into what a wordsmith is and what a wordsmith does, I want to read Rick, I call him Ricky, right. Richard Seabron's bio. Here we go. Richard Seabron is a native of Washington, D.C. He attended Howard University, where he majored in film and political science. He is a men's fashion designer. In 2016, he accepted his call to ministry. He serves as social justice minister at Allen Chapel AME Church and is pursuing his master's at Wesley Theological Seminary. He is the author of 2 books. One book is entitled Dress on Purpose, Upgrading the Joshua Generation. And the second book is entitled Hope, Healing, and the Hood. Thoughts of an Average Brother. And there's nothing average about him. And both of these books can be purchased on Amazon. I'm going to read those titles again. Dress on Purpose, Upgrading the Joshua Generation. And the second book is Hope, Healing, and the Hood. Thoughts of an Average Brother. So, my dear cousin, thank you again for coming. And it's the wordsmith. I know a lot of people were wondering when I sent out the information, what is a wordsmith? It may not, that's not a common word that you hear all the time. So can you explain to my audience, Ricky, what a wordsmith is?
Well, the word smith is an old English term, and it means worker or creative. Mm-hmm. So it derives from people who were working in the metals, be it your coppersmith, ironsmith, or goldsmith. Mm-hmm. And it also applies to language as well, and that when you work or you create with words. So they commonly refer to an author or a poet and even screenwrites as wordsmiths because you create with the word.
With the word. Okay, so did you guys get that? Okay, so these are skillful writers of prose and poetry and literature, correct? So yeah. Ricky, so let me ask you, I always tease my cousin because when he's an exceptional writer. And I used to say, well, Ricky, I love reading your information. I love reading your text, but I always need a thesaurus. When I read your information. And I think that's one of the characteristics of a wordsmith. They're so good with words that they use words that most common people aren't familiar with, right? Mm-hmm. So when did you first realize that you were very interested in words? When did that first come about as a young person?
Well, as you know, our grandmother was highly intelligent. Mm-hmm. And Dunbar High School, which is the high school that your dad graduated from.
And tell us what city.
In Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And the historical significance of Dunbar High School is that the very first black high school in the nation. So it had, a lot of people, affluent black families used to send their children down to Dunbar High School. And the unfortunate part, because of racism, our the black families were impacted by colorism.
Yes.
So a lot of schools they would do what's called the paper bag test.
Wow.
If you were lighter than the paper bag, you could sit up front, but if you were darker than the paper bag, you had to sit in the back. So highly intelligent families and things like that would attend Dunbar, and if you were dark like our grandmother and you got into Dunbar, you were highly intelligent.
Wow.
So the thing of it is, starting with our grandmother and even your mom and our parents, they love language. They're very eloquent speakers. And I think without me even realizing it, it was an influence on me. And my mother, my grandmother and my mother introduced us to words without us even knowing it. They used to, when you read to a child, and as you know, in highly early education, between the ages of, I think it's 3 and 10, that the brain is so absorbent. And that's when a lot of kids learn different languages and stuff like that. And my mom said she kind of regret introducing me to words, because when we were driving around in the taxi cab, I would read every sign, every. But the thing of it is, I gained a love of words and stuff like that, and my grandmother used to introduce me to poetry, to Phyllis Wheatley and Langston Hughes, and a lot of the people in the Black Renaissance. And I didn't even know that my mom told me that my grandmother was living in Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. That's where our Uncle Buddy and our Uncle Lois was born up there.
Right.
So she really had a love for literature, for the arts and things like that. And so she introduced that kind of stuff to me at an early age.
That's very important and very good information. And Ricky, you hit on something that I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize our folks experienced back in the day. So we're talking about public education. We're not even talking about private school. We're talking about public education, and some of our ancestors, some of our relatives who were highly intelligent had to sit in the back of the classroom where there were Black folks, but because of your skin color, depending on how dark you were, right, you had to sit in the back. And we're not talking about Black or white. Right? We're talking about all Black folks.
Right,
some are very fair, some are brown, and some are Black. And the darker you were, the further you were placed in a classroom. That's an interview for another day.
Yes.
See, a lot of children don't even understand how they benefit from those of our ancestors and relatives who had to go through some things so that they could sit in the front, sit in the back, sit by the window, sit by
where they want.
Freely, anywhere that you want. There was a time when people that looked just like us couldn't sit, even looking like us, within the scope of things, right? Had to be separated because of this.
That's right.
That's something. Now I didn't even know about that, but that's something to talk about. Yeah. And that's something to write about. But Ricky, I'm so glad that you shared that as a young person, your mother was very influential in exposing you to words. Like you said, you were laughing, you read everything. And I think that's something that parents can do today.
Yes.
They can just expose their children to everything that they see outside. Signs, right?
Yeah.
Store signs, bus stop signs, anything that has print, just expose them to it. Right. That's what builds language. That's very good, Rick. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I have another question. So how does a wordsmith, we know that they love language. It kind of tickles your ear, right? It really makes you feel special. How do you foster the love of language in children? How do you do that? How would a parent do that? How was it done for you?
Well, you said something, I remember years ago, which I never forgot because of your background in early education. And you said, I used to tell my students that everything, there's a name for it. And we start with our children. As you know, you just like touch your What's your head, your nose, your
Mhm.
eyes, your
Mhm.
chin,
Mhm.
your arms? Everything has a name for it. You pick up a piece of candy, it has a name for it.
Mhm.
You know, a building, it has a name for it. So I think making it fun and identifying the names of everything, and then you create context around that. And I think it makes it that really, really fun for kids.
Right, right. And that's good. And also I noticed for you, Ricky, you are a good storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of being a wordsmith, not
Yeah.
only being able to write a story,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to express that story verbally as well, because you're
Mm-hmm.
utilizing words to capture the attention of the listener.
Yes.
And unlike me, you're not as talkative as I am. And I was I was thinking about wordsmiths. And so I was thinking about it. I said, the people that I know that are very good with words, many of them are talkative and many of them are not. So
Yeah.
do you think that's a common trait in a wordsmith to be, very talkative, gregarious by nature, or are many of them just kind of quiet and observing the environment? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because I found, really quiet people who take stuff in and can create pictures with words.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people like you who very talkative say, wait, and just tell you a story. And what I like about people like yourself, or the commonality in people who tell great stories, they include details that people don't normally think about. Like, I got on this bus, and this big guy, he was a heavy guy, but he had a beautiful smile, and he had this bright orange shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just looking around. I wondered what he was looking at. And then he saw this little baby over in the corner who
Mm-hmm.
was sitting by herself. And I was wondering, where's her mom? And then this lady who seemed to be in distress walked back. And I think that was her mom, because she picked that baby up. And you're like, she's telling a story.
Yeah.
And you're painting a picture
Right.
with your words. And I think that's very important with a good storyteller.
Right. Also, I noticed as I was reading that many wordsmiths use rhyme
Yes.
to engage children, right?
Yes.
So tell me, how does that work for you? Because I know for me, rhyme is what I use most of the time when I'm writing. When I write my children's books, for example, I'm always using rhyme. Just comes just naturally for me.
Yes.
How about with you?
I think is very important, and because I took a creative writing class, and because I always like poetry, they have what's called internal rhyme, and then you talk about rhythm and stuff like that. And I think that's it's almost second nature with kids now, because they're so into hip hop,
Right.
and so good rhyming, and then they rate hip hop artists in terms of how intricate their rhyme patterns are, or how simple their rhyme patterns are, and that they're able to convey messages through rhyme. So I think that's very, very important.
Okay. And as we talk about hip hop, there are very many hip hop geniuses that are wordsmiths, I would think, because they were able to take words that you may not even, many of them coin phrases
Yes.
that you've never heard before, and then they're used universally. Because I was thinking about how a phrase is coined, and when you look up coin phrases, they'll give you words like something to Shakespeare, who is like the master wordsmith, because most of our words come from Shakespeare. And so I was looking up some of the coin phrases, and when you think of a coin phrase, it says it's a phrase that's been used by a person first, and then it's all, then it's used all over the place. Right. And so, for example, wild goose chase, that's a coin phrase by Shakespeare, and it's from his play Romeo and Juliet. And how many times have we used that phrase? Right. Love is blind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a coin phrase. They said it was by Chaucer first, from the Merchants of Venice. Green-eyed monster. That's a coin phrase from Othello, which of course was by Shakespeare. Yeah. And off with his head. From Richard III by Shakespeare. But then I tried to look up coin phrases by Black people. I didn't see necessarily any coin phrases, but I found phrases that were developed by Black people. And I think the issue might be, for us, we might have to copyright it so that we can get the credit for it to be a coin phrase, right?
Because stuff is stolen from us all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Put your foot in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. We straight. Everybody knows we straight.
Right.
My bad. My bad. It's so funny. A lot of our phrases make it to national news. It
Right.
makes it to the, the
Right.
broadcasters, right?
Right.
My boo.
Right.
Bougie is something that we created.
Right.
What you not finna to do.
Right.
Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
They attribute that to Malcolm X. And what's another one? I think there's a few of them that I found. So
Like
yes.
yeah.
So, Ricky, have you ever thought of any phrases that you wanted to coin, or have you ever used a phrase that people say, "Oh, I like that," that word? Have you created any words?
That's interesting that you asked that. I haven't even thought about. Let me think about that, because I'm always writing stuff down.
Right.
And what I like about the language is that you can use like common words in an uncommon way to get people thinking, which is neat about language. So let me think about that.
Okay.
You would pose something to stump me, wouldn't you?
To think about, right?
Right.
So, Ricky, as a wordsmith, let me ask you, what are some basic things that maybe you'd like to share with a mother or a father or a family that might have early learners, and they might notice that their children are good with words or are very expressive verbally, or may not be? What are some strategies that you might want to suggest to help them build those linguistic skills, or comprehension skills, or communication skills?
Read to your children at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's neat about it, the way to develop their comprehension skills, once you read maybe a passage, if it's a long, then sit down and talk about it. And then you can assess or gauge their comprehension of it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times kids are so creative and imaginative, they may take a story somewhere that you didn't think about, but it makes sense. Or they would transfer it to their context. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or they would go with you. Like you might start talking about, a place in Africa where there are a lot of different animals, right? Mm-hmm. And they might transfer that and say, I'm taking those animals to school. I'm taking a bear and a lion and a tiger and a giraffe to school with me. But I think it's so important that you have to allow kids to be creative in that way. And I think that only happens through reading to kids. You can take them to places that their body can't go, but their minds can.
Yes.
And I think that's so important to start reading stuff to kids at an early age. And mm-hmm. I know with us, our parents and grandparents, they read the Bible to us, and for me, that the Old Testament reads like a novel. It's, all those different stories,
yes.
With Samson, and then the children of Israel, they running through a Red Sea, and the people trying to get them.
David and Goliath.
Yes.
Samson. Yes.
Samson, he tore that whole building. He was strong. He tore that whole building down. And I remember when I first read or saw The Incredible Hulk, I said, "Oh, they just copying off of Samson." But that kind of stuff was introduced to us at an early age.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so you say constantly read. So what about using what we say big complex words, big words? What about that?
Well, I think a neat way to introduce those kind of complex words to kids, like I said, everything has a name, mm-hmm. but also most things have a substitute word for it they can use.
Okay.
Like somebody might say, use the word, a kid might say steal. And you might say, well, try the word confiscate.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And a kid might talk around something and trying to avoid the subject. Our kids, if you catch them in something, they try to talk around it. Mm-hmm. You say, another word for what you're trying to do is mm-hmm. obfuscate. And then look that word up. I think, in your daily conversation, introducing those kind of words to kids and expand mm-hmm. their vocabulary. And I used to come across words sometime, and I asked my mother, what does this mean? She said, go and look it up.
Okay.
Go and look it up. Right. That way you won't become brain lazy.
Right.
You look words up for yourself. And then she would sometimes write maybe like 5 words down, and we have to look the word up, and then we use them in a sentence.
Okay.
And that's a way of broadening your vocabulary too, and making it fun. I mean, you might pull like their friends in it, because sometimes a kid might look at an exercise like that as tedious. But if you got a group, maybe his brother, or maybe his friends, when they're doing it together, I think it makes it fun, because you can make learning fun.
Right.
It should be fun.
That's right, Ricky. Okay, so you said read a lot to them, incorporate complex words and have them learn the meaning of the word along with synonyms, words that are synonymous to those words, to build those vocabulary, vocabulary, and learning how to use them in context. So once you write a sentence, right? Once you create sentences for these words, you're using them in context.
Right.
That's good. That's good. And also, like you said, be creative about it, because you're talking about early learners. You must make it fun. You have to
make it fun.
Have to make it fun. And I know when I had my former channel, it was Storytime with Nona. Before I took it down, I used to read a story, but I intentionally presented words that I'm sure they've never heard of.
Right.
And I would use it in context, but I would also use synonyms that they understood to relate to the word. And so kerfuffle was one of those words. It's one of those funny words. Right, and now my grandkids know what kerfuffle means. And oftentimes, if they watch Judge Judy, she uses that word a lot.
Right.
Kerfuffle and flummox. And so when they use them, they know what it means, and they learned it at 3 years old. So kids, like you said, their minds are like sponges. All you have to do is expose them, and they will take it from there.
I remember I was watching Sesame Street, and this was years ago. I still remember this.
Okay.
And one of the characters said, "He's a meanie," and one other character said, "Yeah, what about curmudgeon? I think he's a curmudgeon." I said, "Wow, a meanie." So I was saying that person is a curmudgeon.
And using it and making it fun, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, so let me ask you something else. We know that the internet, actually technology, is a wonderful tool for our children. Yes. Sometimes I can see it as a hindrance too, because we rely so much on the computer. We don't have to learn how to spell anymore. You just go type in half the word and the computer gives you the rest of the word. But putting technology aside, what are some other things that we could do at home if we didn't have the internet? How else can we build these wordsmiths up? Because there are some very linguistic children. You can tell those kids who love to talk, love to tell stories, right? They're limited vocabulary. They like to use the words that they know. How can we build a more solid foundation, even though we have technology? Everybody doesn't have access to technology as much as you think in the home. What are some things that we can do outside of the home? Because I know when my grands come over, I have in my yard, I have something called the learning vine, and I just cut up words and put them on the vine, and it's just a long vine with leaves and tape words, and I might give a word and then have a synonym that matches that word on the back so they can learn. And it's like a little game. Or I may have them match words on word cards. You know what I'm saying? Or I even suggest to the parents to build their own word box of vocabulary words. Anytime you see a word that you don't know, kind of write it down and go over with your child. What are some other things we can do, even though we do have technology? We kind of want them to learn independent of a machine, social media, Did your mother do anything creative like that you can share with us?
Well, I know my one of my favorite teachers, Miss Williams. I still remember her from the 3rd grade. She used to have these things, word books, right? And it would go through the alphabet from A to Z, and it would have uncommon words, right? From A to Z, and she would take us through the alphabet and using these different words. And when we got to the all the way to Z, she said, "Now," and then we went to this character development thing. She said, "You pick a character, you pick a character, you pick a character." So if there was started with the character Nancy, had another character Allison, and had another character Debbie, right? And she said, "Now, using these words, we're going to go through the day in the life of Nancy."
Oh, okay.
Nancy might have been in the 5th grade, this other character, and we would use these words and she said, now it's going to be a trip that you're going to take because people are going to come on your bus as you go through your day. So it's, for instance, Nancy got dressed, she and this was her outfit. She went to school and she said, who is her best friend? Her best friend is Kate.
Mm.
And she would ask, what did Kate have on? She said, does anybody like Kate? And did anybody have an argument with Kate? And sometimes the kids were like, she said, we can't do that. That's not allowed. No shrugging. You have to think about it. And at the end of that trip, that journey we went through, they had developed a whole character during that during the day for that person. When they came home and said, did they get on the bus?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did, but Kate's mother picked her up.
Mm-hmm.
What was Kate's mother's name? I don't know. What about Miss Jackson? Yeah, that works, Miss Jackson. What was the color of her car? It was green. But they had to use incorporate all these different words. Maybe they had maybe 10 words that you could use. You had to use common stuff, but you also had to incorporate those, what we call non-common words, into the story. And I thought that was very, very, very helpful because at the end of the story, those characters were real for us. We connected to those characters and we connected to that story that happened, and it happened in real time. And I thought that was really, really creative.
That's good. Good. And so parents that are listening, that's another strategy that they can use at home. There's so many things that you can do to build words, to build comprehension, to start the writing process, because you want them to learn how to write complete sentences, and then from sentences to paragraphs, from paragraphs to compositions, and then from compositions, there you go, books, right? Yeah. So let me ask you this, Ricky. A lot of people don't understand that you are judged by your verbal presentation. And some people could care less. But I think it's important for parents to understand that they are the first teacher.
That's right.
They're their child's first teacher. So how important is it for parents when we're talking about words and sentences and writing and speaking? How important is it for parents to make sure, as much as possible, that they are using standard English when appropriate for their children? Because see, a lot of our children, we talk about this all the time. Alice and I, we have this conversation all of the time. Many of our children stay in the same gear of language and words. They write in the same gear. They speak in the same gear. Everything is, and I said, you don't drive a bike in the same gear. When you go uphill, you have to shift. When you go downhill, you have to shift. How important is it for our kids to learn? It's okay when you're home that you speak this way. But when you're in school, you must shift that language. When you're in church or masjid or the temple or the Catholic church, you have to shift. When you're meeting the president, you got to shift again. So how do we learn these lessons, Ricky?
That's so important because it was second nature for our parents to pass those lessons on.
Right.
And because they understood, even when we used, when our grammar was off, they corrected us.
Yes.
Don't end sentence with prepositions, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Not only with language, but with etiquette, how to speak properly. I learned the word colloquialism from my grandmother. That's another word for slang. And she said, so that's so important. And to your point, people are judged based upon their proper grammar and how articulate they are.
Right. And
people make unconscious judgments about people based upon how they speak. Like you give grace to certain kids who speak a certain way and might not even be aware of it, or make certain assumptions about that kid is going somewhere,
right? Based
upon how they speak and how articulate they are. Because the thing of it is, I learned not too long ago where, I realized it rather, that you can take two kids and one kid can be highly intelligent and may not be as articulate as the other kid. because he came from a household that they didn't use standard grammar.
Mm-hmm.
So certain assessments are made by people based upon how one speaks and not necessarily how one thinks.
That's right. Oh, say that again. Assessments of people are made by what? Say that again.
How one speaks as opposed to how one thinks.
But our world judges us on how we speak.
Yes.
And because of the way in which we present ourselves verbally, right? Mm-hmm. Then the world is judging us on how we think.
That's
so
right.
If you don't speak well, then the world says they must not have the brain power. They don't present themselves well. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. I've met so many children that don't speak well, but they are very good thinkers.
Yes.
But that doesn't translate well in the classroom. Right. Kids who speak well go to the top of the class and they can be brain dead. But right. The top of the class. So our kids have to learn to play the game and shift the gear. They have, and you know one thing, Ricky, this is just my personal thing. Our kids, what do you want to be? A rapper, a basketball player, a rapper. Okay, got it. Right. But they'll learn the lyrics to the songs, but they don't know the words to the Negro Black anthem.
Right.
Anthem. They don't know the words, but they know every lyric to these songs, these rap singers. And I get it. But see, I remember one time I was teaching, this was a long time ago, and there was this white kid. He came to the school and he was doing some kind of volunteer work. And I'm saying to myself, what? And he lived in a neighborhood. So I don't even know what program he was in. It was so long ago. But he was from California. Mm-hmm. And we had this conversation. This was a long time ago, my early teaching years. And the kids were talking about the rap music. And so I was trying to impress upon them, that's fine to, enjoy rap music, but you can't idolize these rap stars. Because it's all an image, right? And I said, and you're paying all this money, God bless them, because they do good work and everybody buys their records. I said, but their children don't go to a rundown school like this school. That's right. Okay. Their children go to very good schools where they have all the supplies that they need. All the teachers are certified. Okay. I said, so let's stop idolizing these folks because they got the money. Their kids aren't going to a school like your school. And they were, you don't know, you got upset with me. And so the guy that was volunteering, he said, and he was very quiet, but he would come and help. And I forget what program he's in. He said, you really need to listen to your teacher. And they looked at him and he started naming the rappers that he knew because he was from California. And he showed us pictures of some of the rappers. And he said, and these are my neighbors. And he says, and your teacher's absolutely correct. They don't go to schools like this. Because in the school, sometimes you might have, the water fountain works and sometimes it doesn't. That might not. The lunches were not the best. And you know what I'm saying? There were substitutes here, substitutes there. The you know what it is. Yes. And so he was trying to tell them that you have to come to school and take advantage of everything that you're getting, because if you idolize these people that are making all this money off of this rap music, their children aren't. Listen, their kids are far advanced, getting what they need. Right. I think for our kids, it's okay to love music, but don't emulate this stuff. Right. Because it's not real.
It's not real.
And so just, these parents, I think they need to start really identifying what these gifts are. And you got some wordsmiths right in your house. Start exposing them to things so that they can be the next writer, the next Richard Seabron. Have your next book on Amazon. Right, Ricky? Speak on that if you like.
Yeah, I think we need to, a lot of times we model after these stars because in real time, other kind of heroes are not presented to them. Okay. Like we don't take our kids down to a trip to the Washington Post and see a Black editor and know that they're making six figures or like hidden figures. We don't go to NASA and see a beautiful Black women making six figures. We only see these public figures and don't understand that there are beautiful minds creating infrastructure on which other systems are built. And we don't get to see these kind of alternative jobs, people working in IT, people building apps, writers, editors, people writing screenplays, or like these movies that you're watching. Somebody had to write that movie.
Right.
You know, the clothes that you're wearing. Somebody had to create that, or somebody who's doing marketing. Somebody had to write out the marketing and the action plan and all this kind of stuff. So understanding how in real time the skills that you're gaining and you're falling in love with words, how it has implications down the road, and that you can do very well, make a great living for yourself.
Right.
In different areas.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ricky, now that we have you here, and I've purchased both of your books, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I have a bad habit of buying good books and then sharing my books with folks, and they'll say, "Well, let me see it, let me hold it," and I'll give it to them. And next thing you know, I don't have the book anymore. And one book in particular, the one that you had, Dress on Purpose, I had a student who, when I shared that book with him, he loved it so that I just gave it to him. And it was a book to show. Well, you talk about the book. Tell us about that book.
Well, it was actually the impetus for it, where that's another word that like what spurred my desire to write the book is that my nephew, he was going to college, but you know, college kids wear the same kind of stuff all the time, this athletic gear and stuff. And I said, Daryl, what about when you graduate and you want to take a young lady out to eat? What about when you interview? What about when you go on a certain job? I said, you, to your point in terms of linguistically shifting gears, you have to also shift gears in terms of your dress. Because even the way that you dress, you're still making a statement in terms of your personal presentation. And I said, dressing properly is the difference between somebody saying, "I'll call you back," or "right this way." And so that was the reason why I wrote the book, and that, you know, giving this Joshua generation, meaning the next generation, tips on your personal presentation.
It's a wonderful book, and I have to get it again. And the funny thing is, when I retired, I started doing some subbing, and I was at this one school in particular. It's a Muslim student, and he was a fashion plate. Even though he had to wear his outer garment and his kufi, everything matched. His kufi with his outer garment with his sneakers, and he was clean as a board of health. I mean, all the time. And so I had the book, and I said, I have a book I want to show you, because you show kids how to put patterns together, colors together, how to tie a tie, you know, what a gentleman should wear when you're going for that kind of thing.
Right.
So during one of the free periods, he took the book and he was, you know, skimming through it, and he was, "Oh, it's golden. I love this book. Where can I get it from?" And I said, "Oh, sweetie, you can have it." And next thing I know, he came in with something else from the book. You know, it was just very impactful for him. So I think that's a book that parents should get for their children. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Now, the next book that you wrote, please share that one with us.
Well, when I was called to the ministry, I was working in the city, but I really got into it when I was doing ministry over here in Southeast. Southeast, you know, in some sections is crime ridden, layers of trauma, and all kind of things going on. But my thing is, you are hopeless if you are not tapped into a higher power. And so from a theological perspective, I started writing essays. There's 10 essays that really focus on things that are going on in our community and how it impacts our community. And the name of the book is called Hope, Healing in the Hood. And that my thing is, through the Lord Jesus Christ, there's always hope. Through the Lord Jesus Christ, because of his love for us, there's always healing. Therefore, there is healing in the hood. Because I think about this beautiful brown, bold dude who was born of a teenage mother and came from the wrong side of the tracks. And he was a rose growing up through the concrete, and his name was Jesus Christ. And he came to to heal the sins of the world.
Mhm.
And so that was my through line, and that through his love, there always hope, there's healing in the hood.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. And see, folks, that's what Wordsmith, that's what they do. They just take words and they're so eloquent and just runs off their tongue like butter. Ricky, would you mind reading the excerpt from Hope Healing in the Hood for us, please?
Sure. It's this entitled, this essay entitled "Say a Little Prayer."
Yes.
And my connection was that when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said a prayer for us.
Yes.
And the way I connected it is that it's a song by Aretha Franklin. And she said a little prayer for the man that she loved so much. And that's what Jesus did for us. So I just wanted to describe a little bit about Aretha Franklin and what she meant to us, because she had committed herself to funding and impacting the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And so this is a little excerpt from the essay. It says, "Yes, we know what Aretha was. During the age of disco, dashikis, bell bottoms, hide and go seek, pickup sticks, afro picks, and afro sheen, she was our mocha queen, who had come of age while representing the Joshua generation of her day. She proudly represented us with a dignified beauty that was wrapped in the pride and pain of a billion souls. And in that spirit, she defiantly declared to the world that we are young, gifted, and Black."
Mm. Ah, you stopping there? I know you got more.
I didn't want to do this big excerpt, so I just left it there. But if you want me to do more, I have to pull it up and do some.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll have to get the book, because that, Ricky, you just had me like this. Look, in the camera, like, okay, we want more. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank
So thank you, Ricky, for sharing your information with us. I am so fascinated. I have to, after we get offline, we're going to talk more about this paper bag test. I had no idea. That is amazing. And so, as my cousin mentioned, folks, my mother, his mother, and all of our aunties, let me tell you, if your noun and verbs don't agree, woo-wee, they will look at you. I ain't got. Oh, ain't, and oh, and they will go.
That's right.
And so you talk about wordsmiths. I think we were all exposed to wordsmiths coming up, because that was just a standard, Ricky. I think it was just something that was expected. And my mother said, grandmother Emma, you were expected to speak a certain way.
Yes.
That's just how,
Yes.
And even to this day, my mother has an extensive vocabulary. And I remember coming up, and this is another strategy that parents can use. She used to say for us to watch the not the local news, of course we have to, but she said watch the national news.
Yes.
Because the broadcasters are always utilizing words that you may not be familiar with.
Yes.
And that's a way to build your vocabulary. Sit there and listen with a pad and pencil. Mm-hmm. And even if you get one word a day, they will use a word that you're not familiar with, that you can write down, right? And then on your own, learn the syllabication of that word. Mm-hmm. Learn how to spell the word. Mm-hmm. Learn how to use the word in context and in a sentence.
That's right.
And so that's an easy way every day to build your vocabulary. And to this day, when I listen to the news, and there's so many news channels now, because everyone, we have cable, Fire Stick, CNN, those broadcasters are brilliant and linguistically gifted people. Yes. So that's a good way to start your early learners off, just by sitting down and listening to the news. And they might hear one word a day that they've never been exposed to. And guess what? You're building vocabulary that way. And also learning how to tell a story, because newscasters tell beautiful stories.
They do.
Some tragic, some adventurous, some
Yeah.
exciting, but they're telling a story nonetheless.
That's right.
So, Ricky, you have any final words before we leave?
Well, I love poetry, and it's just a simple phrase: just read. Because when we read, it builds up our comprehension, it builds up our vocabulary. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was with this guy. We call him B, but his name is Brian. And his daughter had said, I don't know. He said, that's a reason, but it should never be an excuse, because there's always information that addresses what you don't know.
Wow.
So my advice to kids is that never use the word, never let you don't know be an excuse. It's a reason, but never an excuse, because be adventurous enough to find out.
To find out.
Have a curious mind.
Yes. Ricky, you've given us a lot of wonderful gems for us to just pick up and think about and reflect on. And I especially love the phrase when we talk about the way that you present yourself verbally. People are judging the way you think by the way you speak. And that's not necessarily the case, because there are a lot of brilliant people who may not speak well.
That's right.
But the world doesn't care about that. They're listening to how you speak.
That's right.
You can and have no brains in your head. But
that's right.
Our kids have to learn to shift those gears. So, Ricky, thank you. I love you, cousin.
Love you,
I hope
cousin.
that all of you have enjoyed this broadcast, and join us next week, because we're going to have a firefighter, and and the title of next week's session is The Firefighter and the Early Learning. And if this is your first time joining us, remember to subscribe to this channel, like, and share with all of your friends. And Ricky, we can find your books on Amazon. Give us those titles one more time. They can be purchased on Amazon. One more time.
The one book is called Hope, Healing, and the Hood. It's commentary on social issues. And the other book is Dress on Purpose, Upgrading the Joshua Generation.
Thank you. You can see his name right there on the screen. Ricky, well, it's Richard Seabron. Thank you, Rick. Bye, cuz.
Bye-bye.
And thank you all for joining us today. Bye-bye.